Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. We're doing our series on exemplary Catholic leaders. And today I'm joined by somebody that I have great respect for, Jonathan Conrad. He's the founder and I'm the CEO of the Catholic Woodworker. And you may know about him. He's got quite beautiful products and things to assist you with your prayer work, your prayer warrior work. So Jonathan, happy to see you today. How's it going?
It's going great, Henry. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's great. So thanks, Jonathan, for being here. You know, what we try to do in these interviews is we try to understand fellow Catholic business leaders and how they started things and what they're doing and how's it going and that sort of thing. So why don't you begin, Jonathan, and tell us about your Catholic faith journey? I'm sure people would be interested to know where you came from in the faith and where are you and how that's going.
Yeah. So I was born and raised Catholic. I grew up in a good Catholic home. We went to church every single Sunday. I learned about the saints. I was taught how to pray the rosary. I didn't necessarily love the rosary, but it was, I learned it, right? I learned the mysteries. I went to Catholic schools. I went to Catholic high school. And then I went to college, and I went to Mass the first Sunday I was in college. And I after that, I decided that it wasn't important. And it wasn't like a conscious decision. It just, I didn't think about it. I would come home and I would go to church with my family when I was home, but that was it. And obviously with that comes a whole host of challenges as far as not living out faith. And so I would say during that time, I was far away from the Lord. I didn't have a relationship with him. I followed the rules kind of, but I mean, not really, because I only went to church when I was home. Mm-hmm. Then my wife and I at the time were dating. We got engaged and we knew we wanted to get married in the church. So from that moment on, started going to church again. But again, it was really just I'm Catholic on Sunday when I go to church, and then I'm living in the secular world and I'm acting like everyone else the rest of the time. And I didn't really necessarily notice. It didn't bother me until a couple years into marriage. You know, we had our first boy, and then my wife was pregnant with twins, and work at the time was more or less my life from the standpoint of most of my time was spent there. And even when I wasn't working in my head, mentally, I was working. It was the thing that I was really motivated by and fueled by. And that led to, I worked a lot. I worked probably 50, 60 hours a week. And it was stressful work because everything relied on it for me. And so I started to deal with panic attacks and anxiety and stress. And I was miserable in that state. And I didn't even realize it was just, this was normal. But I knew enough to know that with the twins coming soon, I needed something to change because I knew I wanted to be there more than I currently was. And so, like divine providence, God was there, and I was able to find a different role within the company that I was at. And right after that, we got several new leaders within the company, and my new position was put on hold, and I literally had nothing to do for like 2 months. And during that time, I had a lot of free time, an uncomfortable amount of free time. And I had started to pray the rosary around the time that the twins were born, because I knew I needed something. I was begging God, like, help me. I need some help here. Yeah. And so I started to use some of that free time because I wasn't making this time on my own. So I used that free time to start learning and reading and studying. And my faith started to grow and mature. So that's kind of the background. And this is all before the Catholic Woodworker even existed. But eventually, all of that momentum, that growth led to this desire to, hey, I've kind of come back to the faith. I've started to take my faith seriously. And I realized it's really lonely.
Mhm.
I wanted other men. I wanted to find other men that shared that faith, sincerity that I had. And so that's when I kind of went from just like me having this personal thing that I had in my prayer life to men's evangelization, because it was difficult to find those men because many of them were where I was a couple of years ago, too busy to even
Mhm.
too busy to even participate if they wanted to.
So this is interesting, Jonathan, because, and I'm going to go back to it seems like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like a switch went off. You went to college and then suddenly you stopped practicing the faith. And so I'm just curious about, in your recollection now, retrospectively, was there something, what happened? You grew up in a Catholic family, and you had all, I presume, all of the right training and teaching. What happened there? And then we'll jump forward to your experience when you had this 2 months off. But at that moment, what was the switch when you go to university that seems to be shutting off, I guess?
I guess it was the culture. Because
Mhm.
like I said, it wasn't like I wish, I almost wish that I would have said, I thought about this intently and
Mhm.
I made a conscious decision to walk away from the faith.
Mhm.
It's worse than that. I, it just like it evaporated.
Mhm.
Because in college, at the typical university, weekends are full of activities
Yes.
that are not necessarily good for your
Yes.
soul.
That's right.
And
Yes.
so the busyness of all of that interferes with, and so it, like I said, the best way I can describe it, it was not intentional. It evaporated very
Mhm.
quickly, and it didn't so so I don't know, in such a way that I didn't even notice.
Mhm.
And I'm sad. Like I feel very sad to say that, to admit that.
Yeah. This is I can see that it's definitely something that there wasn't, it seemed there was not a profound thing that happened. It wasn't even a conscious decision, as you say. It just happened. And then
Mhm.
now we fast forward to years later. You're married, you're working, you have uh, children, the twins on the way, I think you said, and you realize that you needed God in your life, I guess, again, and you started praying the rosary. And how did that happen? Was that just, again, a conscious decision? Was it a
That was a
vacuum
conscious
period?
decision.
Mhm.
I want to say that um, I gave a witness talk at our local church a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
and this was a week after my grandfather passed peacefully. He died at the age of 100 in his sleep. We had gotten to visit him literally a week and a half prior. And so I'm telling you this because yes, it was a conscious decision, but like all conversion stories, it doesn't happen overnight. And
Yes.
it's not like I decided on my own that I'm going to start being a better person. It's, I believe my grandfather and my grandmother, I've been told, started praying the rosary daily for their children and for their grandchildren
Mm.
about 20 years ago. And this was around the time I went to college.
Mm. Mm.
And so I firmly believe that Mary found a way to convict me
Yes.
through those prayers, and that led to me having sufficient grace to come back.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not surprising that it was through the rosary. I'm
Yes.
grateful that I was taught those prayers because I didn't ever have like a deep personal relationship with God growing up.
Mhm.
Um, it's not to say that my parents didn't teach me those things, but like having a daily prayer life was not a habit that I ever had growing up,
Mhm. Mhm.
other than, let's say, the prayers that were part of a typical Catholic family.
Mhm. And so there you are, beginning to pray the rosary, and Our Lady, as we all know, Our Lady's, influence through the rosary on us
But it
is
wasn't
profound.
personal.
Yeah, and it's profound. So then I'm jumping now to the business. So you were searching for, I guess, other men, colleagues, peers, to join you in what, in the search for the faith again, or what? How did that happen? And then how does it become the Catholic Woodworker business?
Yeah. So is my audio okay?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay. Um, there were two kind of parallel tracks. One was I had a woodworking hobby
Mm,
that what became a side business called Conrad Designs, and I would make picture frames and home decor stuff.
mhm,
And like everything else in my life at this time, this was around the same time actually. So it's like I'm working nonstop and I've got this side hustle.
mm,
Um, and I had to take some time off from that woodworking, realizing that like I don't have time for my full-time job, let alone this other thing that's
mm,
taking me away from my family. And so I took a pause and I decided at that point that if I was going to go back to woodworking, it was going to be a mechanism, a tool for me to support my vocation.
mhm.
And so I changed the name of that Instagram account to the Catholic Woodworker. So that's track number one, which is
Mhm,
I'm committing my woodworking hobby to God through the intercession of Saint Joseph
mhm.
to make sure that it does not get in the way of, and it supports and fulfills my vocation as a husband and a father. Parallel track is I'm trying to be a good Catholic guy and I need other men to help me.
Yes.
Right. So those are currently separate tracks where I'm doing woodworking on the side. I'm sharing it on Instagram and I'm starting to kind of do the evangelization because it's a natural way of like you go from secular woodworking to Catholic woodworking. It looks very different, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I think the two paths merge when my wife gave me a copy of Father Donald Calloway's book Champions of the Rosary, and
Yes.
this thing is like an encyclopedia.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and over Lent, she got it to me in March, and I devour this book.
mm.
And so I'm finishing this book as Lent is wrapping up. And this was in 2016. So the twins were 3 years old at this point. And I am just completely captivated by this idea of being a champion of the rosary as the primary means for evangelization. And prior to reading this book, in my head, I'm thinking to myself that conversion of sinners, conversion of people that I care about, requires this complex theological debate process
Mm.
of knowing theology and having all the right answers and arguing people to death until you win.
Yes, the intellectual approach.
Right. Which is, I laugh at it now because it's like, that is not ever the way. And if it is, it's in spite of all of that.
Yes.
And so I realized, like, why don't I just be a champion of the rosary like these other guys and these other saints?
Mhm,
And that will be my tool for evangelization. I'm just going to try and get people to pray the rosary and trust that Mary's going to do the rest of the work.
mhm,
And I was like sold all in on this.
mhm,
And so that's when I launched. So Easter Monday, I launched the Catholic Woodworker website as a rosary evangelization blog. I wasn't even necessarily selling anything. There's a couple of things I was selling on Etsy, but it wasn't launched as a store. It was launched as a evangelization platform.
Like an apostolate of some kind. You were
Yeah,
driven. You were motivated to do that rather than a product selling.
correct.
Mhm,
But because of the gifts that I have, like my grandfather taught me woodworking, my dad was an engineer,
mhm,
and we grew up mostly doing DIY projects. Like we did most of the work at home. So like I learned all of these skills. My mom was an art teacher, and so she gave me the creative gifts. And
mhm,
so like and then my background is in technology, so I have the software experience.
mhm.
And so those gifts kind of naturally eventually started to take front center stage where people weren't really that interested in reading my writing, but they were very interested in what I was making. And
This
so
is
I kind of
interesting.
conceded that, like,
Mhm,
even though I thought that I was being called to be this author, like the Catholic
mhm,
gentleman, right? We all have our gifts. And as much as my writing is mediocre, um, the gifts that I have and I put to use translate to we make really great products because of the experiences that I had growing up and the gifts that I have. And so I started to focus in on that more than anything else.
It's interesting that we are instruments, as we both know, and so the switch from writing and being an author to developing a product that's, and I've seen your products, very, I want to talk about some of those products that you have, but it's interesting how we are instruments. We are God's instruments. And, eventually we figure out what instrument, what role we should play, what part we should play. And it's very interesting to hear this. So what, this reminds me then of, it's a Catholic, you have a business run by a Catholic. You run it as a Catholic business also, and you also sell Catholic products, which, that's like a triple whammy, isn't it? It's you've got those three things. And so we've had other colleagues, you and I know people who are Catholics running a business that's not necessarily Catholic, and then eventually they turn that into running a Catholic business, and then they may not necessarily though sell Catholic products. So what about all of that, and what are some of the Catholic principles that you tried to put into play inside of your business?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning it wasn't conscious, because it was just a hobby, right?
Mm-hmm,
And so I think some of the things that have unfolded over time are that we want, as much as possible, as much as we have control over, we want to make sure that our relationship with other businesses contributes to their flourishing and not their exploitation.
mm-hmm.
I think that more than anything is probably our number one principle, like Catholic principle, because first of all, I loathe buying cheap stuff that falls apart. Not everything that's made in China is made cheaply.
Mm-hmm.
There are so I want to be clear there. I'm not chastising all outsourced manufacturing. We have rosaries made in Brazil, for example, but they're phenomenal craftsmen. But the important piece is do you know where the materials are coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And early on, the answer was no. I was buying beads on Amazon because that's the only place I knew where to get them.
Yes.
But the problem with that was I didn't know where they were made. I didn't know how they were made, and I didn't know who was making them. And so I naturally found that usually the best quality products are not made through the exploitation of others. It's hard to have both. And so naturally, when you gravitate towards the best products, the best materials, you're usually moving away from some kind of supply chain that is exploitive in nature versus supportive in nature.
Right. So your principle then is, it's kind of like a fair trade thing. You're trying, is this right? You're sourcing products that are made of a higher quality, and therefore the exploitive nature of it maybe has gone away. And so was that your decision on, not to be exploitive or to be quality driven? I'm just curious about that.
It started with quality, but I think also as a small business, and at this point we're a micro business, it was just me.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the relationships and talking to and connecting with suppliers, because especially early on, I wasn't buying products, I was just buying materials.
Yes.
And so I really enjoyed the relationship aspect of talking to a bead supplier and learning about, and the fact that they could tell me who was making them, and they could tell me stories about these families and the benefits of this work, and the way that she handles that relationship in their well-being was very, very exciting and inspiring to say, these are the kinds of relationships that I want.
Yeah. And so do your customers, I guess it comes to mind, do your customers appreciate that? I presume they do, but I'm just interested to know if you find that.
I have to make some assumptions. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else than the fact that we have customers that buy our products, and our products are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And they're expensive because we pay our employees good prices, and we pay good prices for the materials that we buy. And therefore, they're going to be more expensive than other things that you might find on the internet that are, let's just say, mass produced, or more likely mass produced, regardless of how they're produced. And so based on the fact that we have a lot of great customers, a lot of really loyal customers that provide consistently good feedback and pay the prices that we charge. It gives me confidence that they appreciate the quality of the products that we produce.
You know, I know that you have thousands of customers. I know that you have probably, you know, five digits, you know, five numerals in your the number of customers. And so this is interesting. You've got a sense of quality. You're heading towards, would this be right? I don't want to put words in your mouth again either, but is this, are you heading towards a just wage or a fair wage as a deliberate Catholic policy in running your business? Because I presume you are.
Yes. And what's interesting is that it's falling on both sides of the coin of like, there's a just wage from the standpoint of making sure that you're paying enough. But then there's also the challenge of the just wage on the other side of making sure that you're not paying too much and causing your customers to suffer.
Yes.
That is the, like, most of the virtues are in between two extremes.
Yep.
If just wages is a Catholic principle, it is in two extremes of, we want to make sure we're paying the right amount, a fair amount, both fair for our employees and fair for our customers. And we're kind of in the middle of that right now because some of our wages are high because of the complexity of the process. And so we're looking at how can we reduce the complexity for the benefit of our customers, so that they don't have to, like, maybe so our prices can go down or something like that, or so that we can keep them where they're at without raising them. Right. And at the same time, provide just wages and working conditions so that our employees are not dealing with some undue burden because of the messiness of how we run our business.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that have to be balanced if you are really trying to take good care and be a good steward of both your employees and your customers.
This is these moving parts that you speak of. This is something that at the Catholic CEO we see all the time. I'll frame it the question this way: can you be? Well, we always say, can you be Catholic and successful in business? Yes, you can. We believe that you can. So how do you know that how can the Catholic woodworker be profitable then and provide income and employment for you and you know, your pension plan for your family and so on and so on, and juggle all these other things? How do you, what's the mechanism? And I know you and I have talked offline about the tools that are necessary to do that, but could you comment on some of, how do you do it? How do you balance all these things and then actually, you know, run a profitable business so that you can stay in business? Because if you blew it on any one of these, you could fold rather easily.
Yeah. So I think there's three things. Like, the first one, I want to make this point clear that selling Catholic products does not make us Catholic,
Right.
because
right.
I've fallen for this myself, that it is not the work that is dignified, but the worker. Because of our nature as baptized Christians, we get our dignity through our baptism and our participation in the life of the church. And because of our participation, what we do has the opportunity to be dignified. Yes. So whether we're making rosaries, just because we're making rosaries does not make us better or even objectively good. It is whether or not we're living out our faith. So that's point number one, that it has to be us living the Christian life well, first and foremost. That's number one. Number two would be, I'm still learning a lot, because I didn't set out to start a business. I set out to share my gifts with the world. And the output of that was a business that I had to learn how to run. And I'm in the middle of that process. There are many things that I don't do well, or that I don't know how to do well yet, that I'm learning. But they don't scare me as much anymore. You know, we've done a lot of work with your group, and that's been helpful in just accepting the reality that whether you want to be a ministry or not, I live in the United States of America. It runs a certain way. We have this thing called the economy. We have this thing called a government, and these are things I have no control over. They're part of our culture, and in order to be in the culture without being of it, we don't have a choice. We're part of this system. And so that means that I need to have a budget, and I need to have a bank account, and I need to have I need to look at my cash flow projections and other things like that sound not Catholic, as if we're only concerned about the money, but it's like, if we don't have a prudent plan, then I won't have money to pay my employees. And so I think I'm coming to appreciate what it looks like to run a business as part of the job, and trying to find the dignity in that, because when we can learn, I think most business owners typically don't start and say, I'm exceptionally good at running a business, I'm going to start an arbitrary business.
Right on. But many people will start, they have a product in mind, or they have there's a business need they want to solve, there's an economic problem they're trying to solve, and they go ahead and do that. But the skill set of the business, I'll use a simple analogy, which you might chuckle at, but you're a woodworker guy, and so you would have the right tools. You'd have to use the right tools. You would not use an axe. My silly example, you wouldn't use an axe, would you, to build a beautiful, I don't know, a bed frame, a sleigh bed or something like that. You wouldn't use an axe for that, but you would use the right tool, and you would sharpen it and take care of it. And so I suppose, in my simplistic analogy, maybe that's what you're saying. And this is what we hear from a lot of people.
Yeah. And it comes down to, if you want to be a good Catholic business owner, you have a duty and an obligation to learn or outsource the principle, the foundational principles of running a healthy business, because that is what is required of you to be a good steward of that gift that God gave you. Even if you accept the reality that this business that you have is a gift, whether you're making rosaries or you're building concrete walls, it doesn't matter. It is a gift from God, and that gift can be put to good use so long as you're a good steward of it. And being a good steward of it means that you need to be skilled in, or have people on your team that are skilled in sales and marketing and finance and business planning and all these other pieces. Now, how you do sales and how you do marketing and how you do financing is going to look very different.
Yes.
But it's still an operational piece of a healthy business.
Yeah. Recently, I've heard people talk about marketing. If you're a Catholic business and you want to run according to Catholic principles, how do you do marketing? And so, we've talked general principles. You don't exploit. You don't produce images that are, that are against the protection and that we get from the custody of the eyes. All of these things. And so, what challenges have you faced, Jonathan, in your business that, let's say, standard principles out there, which, we're going to use the right tools, as you said, but there are some tools that are the wrong tools just because they're wrong in themselves. And what challenges might have you faced in your business where you've had to decline doing certain things because they're actually inimical to the Catholic faith?
So there's two things that come to my mind. The first one is a small example. We designed a crucifix, and we had the right design, but somewhere in the process there was a misspelling, and it's the sign above Jesus's head.
Yes.
And about a month in, we had a person, can't remember if they were a customer or not, that was charitable enough to say, hey, I don't mean to be insulting or anything like that, but I looked into the Latin, and the Latin on this crucifix is invalid. It's not like if you interpret it this way, then it's fine. There's just a letter missing, and it shouldn't be missing. And it wasn't like, how shame on you. It was just, in case you didn't know, this is a true statement. And so we had to decide, okay, what do we do? Right? Do we, only one guy noticed, let's just, hopefully no one else noticed.
Right.
Or do we
keep selling it? Yeah.
Fix it later? Like someday we'll fix it, when we can afford it, or do we stop production immediately, make new parts, and scrap all the old parts? And in this situation, we scrapped all the old parts. We just couldn't in good conscience sell a crucifix that had that kind of misspelling. It just didn't seem right. Now, I'm sharing that simply because that's an example. I'm sure there are lots of examples of where we didn't make the right decision. But I think that, those are examples of tougher decisions that maybe it's part of the perfectionist in me, but there's a part of that just what would I want? And I'd probably want the right spelling. So, and then I think the other piece is marketing. And I will say this is an ongoing struggle. I think there are some in the Catholic space that would suggest that marketing period is evil. I don't know if that's fair. There's not enough nuance there. But I do think that secular marketing is not very Christian-like. It goes against many of just core value principles because it is generally ordered towards the benefits of the business. In other words, we have a goal because we want to get this much money. And so we build a marketing plan to get this many people to buy this many products.
Yes.
And so it really comes down to motivation. And so the marketing piece is an ongoing struggle. I think right now the model that we kind of take is this. We focus, for example, on, let's say, Google ad spend, because generally that's people that are already interested in what we're selling.
Yes.
And we do want them to hear about us because we think that we make the best products in the industry.
Yeah,
otherwise, we wouldn't be in business.
That's right. You want to portray that. In all fairness, you want to show that you have the quality. I can get that.
If anything, it comes down to this. We'd want to make sure that they know that they have other options than Amazon. I don't really look at competitors as we're up against these other people. I would consider Amazon a competitor. I would prefer that nobody buy rosaries on Amazon because on the whole, you have no idea where those were made. You have no idea what the quality was. Whereas if you buy from me or if you buy from anyone else like me, we're not the only ones that do this. There are lots of great businesses that make products like ours. I would recommend all of them if they make good quality products because they take the same kind of care that we take. So there's that piece of it. And from the marketing standpoint, I think there's a healthy detachment of not looking and saying, I decided that I want to make this much money this year. So much as this is what we're seeing. The market seems to be expressing this much interest in our work. And therefore, we really want to be prepared to support that market demand.
Yes.
And so our marketing efforts are mostly, I put them in the category of evangelization, of we're making sure that people know what we're doing and why we're doing them. Most of our emails are ministry focused in that I'm sharing my own faith journey with my subscriber audience. I'm informing them of things like, hey, Lent is coming. Here are some Lenten practices that I've done myself that have been proven fruitful. And we do have products associated with those Lenten practices. Others we don't. But there's the Catholic Gentleman has this thing, and the Catholic Man Show has that thing, and Exodus 90 has this other thing. And we'd really recommend that you check those out because when we're doing a good job, our number one priority is not sales. Our number one priority is supporting and materially supporting our audience, our customer base with these spiritual weapons.
Yeah. You're responding, you're informing, but you're trying not to manipulate or create an addiction or all of those other negative things about marketing. And so this is threading the needle in some ways, but it's also, I think, very Catholic because you're just like this pursuit of the virtues. Virtue is in the mean. You're trying to kind of go up the middle here, and you want to expose the value of your product, but you also at the same time aren't forcing. You're showing that there are alternatives out there. You're being extremely fair, and you might say just in your approach. Would that be right?
That is the goal. And like I said, it is a constant struggle because I think you could pick any extreme, we've probably been there at some point in our history of being too pushy and focusing on sales. Because it's like, okay, great, I got one of my customers to buy his 5th rosary. Well, it's like, what's he going to do with 5 rosaries? Unless he's giving them away. That's a totally different thing. But yes, it is a constant struggle, and in a healthy struggle, like because there's this balance that you have to do. And so that's where these are the things that I've learned, and these are the things that I'm striving for. And each day we're trying to continue to get better at it. And I think looking at it from the standpoint of evangelization versus marketing really does help us stay focused on why we're doing it and what outcome we're looking for, that we're trying to support, versus it's very easy to get caught up to. And I've fallen for this many times, is just focusing on the dollars.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you do have to pay the bills. But when you put your business in God's hands and you do the right things, He provides.
Yeah. This is you're getting onto a topic. You've been articulate, Jonathan, in how you approach the Catholic principles in your business. I want to talk about the evangelization a bit in a second here. And in fact, let's go there. Talk about you were searching for other men with whom to share, perhaps, would this be right, your prayer life or your role as leader of your family, as father, husband. Let's talk about the other men. I'm not saying it's your customers exactly, because your customers are men and women and families and everybody else. But what about evangelization of men as leaders of their families? You've talked about this a little bit offline with me as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it is selfish in that it's like, it takes a village, and I didn't want to have to do this on my own, because I think going through that conversion process, I was keenly aware of how weak I was, and that I was not strong. And in some ways, like, our goal as Catholic Christians is not to be strong, but to let God be strong in our weakness.
Yes.
And so what that requires is, it requires brotherhood. It requires accountability. I knew that, or I learned quickly, that I wasn't making progress on my own. I was making progress intellectually because I could read all the books I wanted to, but it wasn't translating into loving better, being more sacrificial in the way that I love my wife, and the way that I love my kids, and the way that I love the people closest to me, until there was some accountability where, when you're in relationship with other men, naturally, or hopefully, you're going to talk about harder things.
Yes.
You're going to admit things that you are uncomfortable admitting. And you either have to decide, I'm going to start lying to my friends, or I'm going to fix the things that are wrong so that I don't have to tell them this stuff anymore.
Right. The accountability feature.
Yeah. And so there's part of it. It's like, I don't want to tell my good friend about this thing that I'm struggling with, and then the next time I see him in a month, tell him I've made 0 progress. I'm still just as bad, or I'm still struggling just as much with this thing as I was when we first talked. Like, that's not fun.
Yeah.
Now, when I don't talk about it, then I just keep it to myself, right? But that's where, ideally, good friendships with other men, good virtuous friendships, are going to naturally present opportunities for that vulnerability, where we can be honest and share, like, you know what, I'm really struggling with personal finance right now. Like, it's a mess, and I don't necessarily know what to do about it. I feel scared. I feel anxious. And like, I needed those things, or at least I was aware that I needed that, because I was trying to make progress in the spiritual life. Pornography had been a struggle for me for many, 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 many years. And it was, the accountability was the tipping point where I went from back and forth struggle with it, on and off, to finally, praise God, breaking free from that and sustaining that freedom. And the accountability is what made the difference. Because when I was alone in that struggle, I could rationalize all the time, whatever I wanted to, but
Yes.
I was also alone with it, in the dark with it. Whereas when I brought it into the light, there was strength in that.
Yeah.
And so whatever those things that we struggle with, that accountability, knowing that there's this other guy who cares about me, who wants good for me, who's willing to sacrifice for me, take cold showers for me, that is strength in numbers that we need.
Yeah. This is what you've said is so profound. You know, in the St. Joseph forums that we are starting across the US and Canada in the Catholic CEO. And remember, I've run these kind of secular peer groups of mostly men, business leaders. In the secular world, there's an accountability feature, but it doesn't go far enough, as you can imagine. It doesn't go far enough because there's certain topics, such as the one you've just mentioned, nobody wants to talk about. Nobody even wants to go there. So there's a certain barrier that crops up. But in the Catholic world, and what I'm hearing you say is you have found or will find, and all Catholics, we could all find this by associating with other men who are going through the same struggles and who can admit to each other and then hold each other accountable. And so is that a role of the Catholic woodworker? It seems like it to me. And is that where you're heading with this?
It is very informally a role, in the sense that our chief marketing efforts are email evangelization, which we send out weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do weekly, monthly, or quarterly, but our bulk of our subscribers get emails from us weekly, and 90% of the content is focused on growth in the spiritual life and encouragement of that community and accountability. That's about it for now. You know, you and I have talked. I have a vested interest in more opportunities for men to gather. There's a lot of complexities in that. And so, yes, it is a passion of mine. It's something that I'm interested in my personal life, and most of what happens in my personal life some way gets integrated into the Catholic Woodworker, because of the fact that, again, if it's ordered towards the good of and the fulfillment of my vocation, then I like sometimes it's better to synergize, where it's like, well, if I need this in my personal life, it might as well be part of this ministry, because I need it myself anyways. And all of our products, by the way, are ordered towards that, where everything that we sell came out of a need in my own personal life for that thing. And we don't really sell a lot of things that don't fit in the category of things that you could or should be using daily. There's other companies that make great Catholic accessories, you know, things, but we stick to really like the meat and potatoes of rosaries, crucifixes, and home altars, because that should be part of, all three of those things should be part of your daily prayer life,
right?
Or is part of it for most Catholics.
Yes. You know, Jonathan, can you talk about home altars a little bit? I know I've discovered since coming to know you that actually there are a lot of people that don't actually understand what a home altar is. I'm wondering if you could explain that. Just it's not a product endorsement thing. It's just let's talk about a home altar, because that's a powerful prayer tool.
Yes. So the home altar is not a place where families say the mass on their own, right? Families are a domestic church.
Yes.
And altars are a place of worship and sacrifice, which is what prayer is. You know, the Catechism talks about prayer literally as a battle. And so the home altar is a name we give to a crucifix and prayer card set that is specifically designed to be set on a tabletop. So we have crucifixes that hang on walls, and then we have home altars that are essentially crucifixes with other things like prayer card holders. And the purpose of it is that we have a place to sleep, a place to go to the bathroom, a place to cook and eat and rest and entertain and park our cars. We ought to have a place in our home, a space for worship, because church is not the only place where we're supposed to spend time with God. God is supposed to be part of our entire life. And so in the home as the domestic church, we have a responsibility to make physical space for God in our homes as well. And so the home altar gives us an opportunity to make space for God. I've had people ask, like, is a home altar the proper terminology? I'm probably not qualified to make those determinations, but I didn't make it up. Like, a home altar existed before me.
Yes.
I was at the Indianapolis Art Museum 2 years ago, and there was this, let's say, I don't know, 17th or 18th century armoire, this huge, massive walnut dresser that, like, floor to ceiling with all this intricate carving. And you open the doors, and there's this massive crucifix with a statue of Joseph on the left and a statue of Mary on the right, just like you would see in a church, in smaller form. And it was literally built into this piece of furniture. Like, it was the furniture. So I should not be getting credit for inventing the home altar. This is not something that we invented. We simply created a variation of it that is affordable and portable. And it has existed for many centuries, at the very least, prior to us existing.
This is interesting. I could just imagine the exquisite beauty of such a carved.
Oh my gosh.
It must be impressive.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing in various times I've been to Rome, and once or twice I've gone into the sacristy of a major basilica and have seen something like this, where there's a kneeler in front of and it's a cupboard. It's you literally, like you said, like an armoire. You open it up to cupboard, and there's a crucifix in there, but you kneel at the kneeler, and then you're sort of facing in. Your face, your front of your body is almost inside of this closet thing. And talk about an intimate connection with our Lord, where you're kneeling right there in front of him, and there's no other interruptions. You don't have the world around you. There's not a window, and there's not a mirror or anything else to see anything else. You're right in the middle of it. So do you have such a product, though? I guess you have.
We have aspirations for something that complex. But I think our initial goal for this, again, it first came out of, I needed to fight that battle that I was fighting with pornography.
Yes.
When I was traveling for work. At home, it was fine, but I'd go travel for work and everything would fall apart. And so I was asked to come up with something creative for Exodus 90. This was many, many years ago.
Yes.
It was just kind of a prototype. And I was like, well, I'm going on a business trip in a couple of months, and I'd really like to do better. And so, inspiration struck. And I built this little wooden box, and I built the crucifix with a stand and a holy water container and prayer cards and enough space for my rosary. And it took me, a good bit of time to build this. Wasn't necessarily reproducible just because of the amount of time that went into it. But
yes.
I felt so confident going into that trip. And it really turned into like a pilgrimage. I went to daily mass before all the meetings started. I was there for a week. I blessed the plane. I blessed the hotel room when I walked into the hotel room. And so, like, the current variation of the home altars that we sell, the one that's the most popular one that starts at $29, is specifically designed to fit into the box that we send it in. It's a durable cardboard box that will last a long time, and you can travel with it. But anytime you're leaving your home, anytime you're leaving that space, you're going somewhere, especially a hotel, you have the opportunity to make that space, to recreate that space wherever you go. And so it really was designed for portability, so that men who travel for work can bring their prayer life with them in a physical, tangible way.
Yeah.
And it has been a game changer.
Yeah.
I haven't traveled in 3 years, but we still bring something like that with us when we travel as a family.
Yeah.
If we're not staying with friends.
I love this example because priests have taught me over the years. I traveled a lot for business as well. I've traveled to 30 countries and a lot of economic development type of business opportunities. And the priests always said to me, cover the television set in your hotel room, grab the bedspread and cover it, or take it out, actually send it out. Phone the concierge desk, please remove my television. And then, put the crucifix up on the table and sprinkle the room with holy water, because you never know what goes on in hotel rooms, as we both know. And so, this is a powerful message for people. And so the very fact that you can take a portable home or travel altar with you, I think, is a powerful message, and it's a powerful tool. And so I imagine your customers, your clients, those people who are buying your products must tell you something. Do they, what do people say? What do your customers say about your products and so on? Do you get any feedback about this?
We do. Interestingly enough, right? So I started working with you in October, and I think a month or two after, because it's like I had an idea, but I didn't really have a mechanism to get the answer from them firsthand. So we implemented a post-sale survey where
yes.
we would ask them the question of, what is your mission? Like, you bought this for a purpose. What is your mission?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we get a wide variety of answers, but universally the best way to summarize it is either for their own spiritual battles or for the battles that somebody close to them is fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've heard stories of these small home altars being placed in hospital rooms for people that they know that are struggling with cancer,
yes,
especially if
yes.
they're long-term care. Maybe it's I've had deacons and or priests purchase them, that they bring them with them if they have to, visit somebody's home or things like that. But a lot of the comments, regardless of whether it's a rosary, a home altar, or crucifix, is this is a concrete, tangible way for me to pursue this holy pursuit. And at the very least, it's some kind of visible marker for that commitment.
Yeah. Men are visual, right? Talking about pornography and other topics like that. Men are visual. And so to have an altar at home like this, or I'm very fascinated by on the road in the hotel room, it's the visual focus then. And, when the mind and when the temptations start to hit, that visual focus is often the catalyst that gets you off that thought. And puts you onto a higher level thought and the right thought. So I can see that people would be appreciative of this.
Yeah. And I mean, that is like, we build beautiful churches, not because God needs beautiful churches.
Exactly.
We build them because we
yeah.
need beautiful churches, because we are physical creatures. We are visual creatures that are affected by those things. And so when we see beauty, which comes from God, it reminds us of him.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we make beautiful rosaries on purpose because, well, first of all, we make durable rosaries because we don't like rosaries that break. Nobody does. But we make beautiful rosaries also because even if it's because of our weakness, we're more inspired to pray a rosary. It's like when especially guys, we have our own struggle with vanity. Mm-hmm. If I decide that I want to go start running marathons, mm-hmm. I'm not going to put on my dirty pair of lawnmower shoes mm-hmm. and start running. I'm probably going to go buy a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
You're going to play the part, so to speak.
Yeah. And so that mm-hmm. looks differently for all of us. Maybe some of us are less, let's call it vain, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But it is evidence that, yes, we benefit from having some kind of marker, visual marker that is associated with some kind of goal that we have. And so most of the time I hear that it's not, hey, I'm buying a rosary. I've been praying the rosary for years and I just want to keep praying it. It's typically, I want to start praying the rosary, or I have this new battle that I'm fighting, or mm-hmm. I need to fight this battle better. It's been there for a long time and I need to do a better job of it. That the purchase of that product, the crucifix, the rosary, or the home altar, coincides with some kind of new or renewed mission.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing with that feedback.
Right. Thanks for telling us about that feedback. I also have a sort of an heirloom feature. I'm going to ask you about this because I have a rosary that my dad had and his dad had. And so it's a powerful talk about evangelizing, it's the continuity of the faith in the Katarna family. You know, my dad, my grandfather owned this rosary, and I have it now. And I don't, it's in, you know, vulnerable shape, you might say. It's kind of been used up quite a bit for 100 years probably now, but I'm careful when I touch it and hold it. But I guess high quality products that you produce could become, in fact, heirlooms for people. And I just thought
we really do. I mean, we call it out, like they're designed to last a lifetime. Obviously, like I had a young woman ask me, you know, I'm looking for an indestructible rosary for my future husband. And I told her, honestly, there's no such thing. Like all created things have are going to end at some point.
Yes.
We design our products to be heirloom quality in the sense that we expect them to last a long time. Something like a rosary, if it's used daily, the reality is that at some point it will need a repair. I have yet to have to repair any of the rosaries that I've made myself. I have 5 or 6. I'm always have one in my pocket. We test our products extensively, but like if you use your rosary every day, eventually you might need a repair, you know, 20, 50, 100 years down the road. What's interesting though, is when you use quality materials, you can repair. So if the cord eventually wears out, now we use the best cord that you can buy, but it's still cord, right?
Yes.
And so eventually, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 50 years, that cord is going to fray, probably, or the metal is going to wear down, right? But if you use good quality materials, they can be repaired. Just like we have chairs in the office, actually. They used to be in our kitchen, now they're in the office, that have the markings of my grandfather who repaired those chairs 50 years ago. The left and the right are penciled on the bottom of the chairs because they were made well with good materials in such a way that it can be maintained, if nothing else maintained, potentially repaired. And so I think that is a key element of heirloom, is that there's no such thing as a thing that is indestructible. It's so much that it's built with care in such a way that it can be maintained for generations.
Yeah. And what a
metaphor,
strive
for that.
Exactly. And you're striving for that, but what a metaphor for, you know, how our spiritual life needs to be developing. We need to make it not indestructible. It's not, it's always vulnerable, but we need to make it better quality, higher quality, and we need to push forward on that
care and maintenance, right?
Care and maintenance. There you go. That's right.
Yep.
Well, you know, Jonathan, we could talk a lot more about all of these things, and I'm grateful that you could join us today. You know, it's a powerful testament to how you can run a Catholic business according to Catholic principles and make high quality products and help people evangelize and spread the gospel. It's a great package, and it's wonderful that you were with us today. Maybe when you bring us into close here, how about telling us, you know, have you got any special events coming up, any special product promotions, anything that's that you want to let us know about? How do we find you? Where do we get your information? If you could tell us about that, please.
Yeah. So the best place to find us is at our website, catholicwoodworker.com. If you Google search the Catholic Woodworker, you'll find us as well. Honestly, the best way to keep in touch is at some point within 10 seconds of being on the website, you're going to be asked, hey, do you want to hear from us? And you'll have the option of saying weekly, monthly, or quarterly. We do try and we are respectful of that. But that's the best way to hear from us, because through those emails, we keep in touch with our customers. And we share recommendations as the liturgical season goes through its paces. And I share my own kind of personal faith journey, and that's the best way to keep in touch with us. You know, occasionally we'll have, you know, overstock discounts or promotions based off of spiritual practices. Like I said, you know, we had a discount recently for Lenten promotions, but generally speaking, it's we share our ministry through email, and we love connecting with our customers that way.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, we both are aware that Ash Wednesday is a couple of days from now. It's coming up. And so we can have an opportunity then to see what you have to offer as prayer tools for us to on our spiritual journey. So, God bless you and your family and your business and the people that are your customers and all the people that work with you. And thanks again for being with us today, Jonathan.
Thank you, Henry. God bless.
God bless. Thank you. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. Thanks for being here with us today, and stay tuned. There'll be others in our series of exemplary Catholic leaders.